lying scallywag.
Interpretation of a stupid story, man, that was written before the word
Right. So
fiction.
you were ignorant of omnipotent, and you kept.
Sorry, I've already given you that. You can.
There's nothing Jill came in and told you that I didn't. Yeah, right, genius. Yeah, listen, you guys are afraid. You're afraid. You are in total fear of actually engaging in meaningful conversation. That's why I had to come here. And I invited one of the cowards on the panel to come here, but of course he won't show up. The conversation led to separation of church and state. So not only did I have to educate these fools, they're atheists. Not only did I have to educate them on what the Bible means when it uses the term omnipotent, all powerful, El Shaddai, um, which means that he cannot lie. That's what makes him all powerful. The fact that he cannot do something. I had to educate them on that. Then the question of church and state and its intention, its original intention from the founding forefathers of our country, and what they intended to mean by separation of church and state, as opposed to what atheists believed about it today. So, interestingly enough, another atheist enters the room and reads the definition, the modern definition. Then she reads a letter from it wasn't the Danbury letter, but it was a letter from the founding fathers. I think it was not Thomas, but Edison, totally contradicting. I said, stop, hold on. What is it? Did you hear what you just read? You just totally contradicted your modern definition. Oh, what are you talking about, Jill? What are you talking about? And then once they realize that they're caught in a conundrum, they start muting and kicking. And so I got kicked eventually. So I invited him here. Let's see if he shows up. Hey, what's going on, Joseph Prince? Let's see if he shows up or if he stays and he cowers in his little echo chamber over there where you're not allowed to speak, especially when they know the Christian is right and they know that the conversation, if it continues, it won't look good for them. Okay. Now I was able to get away with defeating them in one argument when it came to omnipotent, and I was able to demonstrate that their definition of omnipotent is not the one the Bible uses. So if you're going to do an internal critique on the Bible and say that the Bible is contradicting, then you need to do so. Stay internally in the text with your definitions that the text is using. Don't try to import a foreign definition and say, look, the Bible is contradicting because omnipotent means this. And in the Bible, he's not all powerful because he can't do this. No, you just imported your definition onto the biblical definition to make it contradict. What you want to say, if you're an honest person, but atheists are not honest, what you want to say is that our modern definition, or even a definition that Epicurus is using in ancient Greece, is not the same, contradicts the definition that the Hebrews use. That's called honesty. But atheists are not honest. There's not an honest bone in their body. They're going to say, well, the Bible got it wrong because God is not omnipotent in the Bible. No, dummy. The Bible uses a different understanding of omnipotent. Omnipotent to the Old Testament believer in God, El Shaddai, El Elyon, or Almighty, the Almighty One, means that God is the most powerful. Doesn't mean he can do anything. Having the ability to do everything doesn't make you more powerful. It actually makes you less powerful. Very logically speaking, if I have the ability to mess up, that means I am less powerful. Although I have one more ability than you, God doesn't have the ability to mess up. He can't be wrong. So I have another ability, but having that ability to error is not making me more powerful. It is making me less powerful. Derp. So pointing that out to them, that was pointed out. Then they shifted totally to separation of church and state. Listen to this. Listen to this, guys.
Ignorant of your definition.
That's
I
not
mean,
what I'm here to question
Oh,
you.
actually, we're still discussing here the definition, the biblical definition of omnipotent, and they're shocked. One atheist here, this guy here with the glasses, he admitted, I've never heard. He never knew that Christians believed that other gods existed. Like, are you guys actually reading, engaging with actual Christians, or are you picking and choosing which Christians you want to hear from? I think it's the latter. By the way they treat me, I know they do not treat knowledgeable Christians. They do not give them a platform. They would rather speak to Christians who don't know the answers to these questions. Why? Because that confirms their ignorance. And they feel more comfortable with Christians who confirm their ignorance than they do speaking to Christians that destroy, or at least try to destroy, their ignorance. Because remember, most atheists, most liberals do not want to know the truth, because knowing the truth and accepting the truth as, or even a truth, means now they have to evaluate that truth and include that in their formulation, how they derive to the final truth. They don't want to include the definition, the biblical definition of omnipotent, in their final conclusion, that the four omnis contradict the. Remember, they have an argument and a position that they're trying to, an agenda they're trying to push, that the omnis somehow are contradictory. But in order to push that theory, they have to first pervert the elements of the theory, omnipotent, the definition, the exact definition, in order to come away with. So they stifle any Christian that comes in to correct their definitions of these terms, because once we correct the definitions, they no longer have an axe to wield. Now, omnipotent is what the Bible says it is, so it can't contradict. If omnipotent is what you say it is, then it will contradict. Just that simple. So we're still having that discussion here, and then we'll get to church and state. And I'll be here for about 2 hours, and I guarantee you, this coward McTime, who wanted to talk, he wanted to go on and rant, won't come in and have a one-on-one discussion. He feels more safe around people who can mute and put backstage and stifle any response to his questions or his inquiries. That's the environment he prefers, because he wasn't raised by a man. A man would have clicked on the link and have been here right now. He would not have stayed in an echo chamber. He would have accepted the challenge and clicked on the link and had the one-on-one conversation. But he wasn't raised by a man. Remember, he's African American. So more than likely, he was not raised by a man. Okay, more than likely the case. This definition, because his definition came before the Bible's, but when the Bible uses the word, it means Almighty. It means El Shaddai. It means that he cannot lie, but that there is no other being that is more powerful than him. Okay, so El Shaddai, biblically, the definition of all powerful, logically, cannot mean El Shaddai, cannot mean Almighty, cannot mean all things, can do all things. Definitionally, all you have to do is read where the Bible says God cannot do something, but yet he is still Almighty. So, dummy, how can your definition of Almighty biblically mean can do anything if the Bible says that Almighty means that he can't do all things? He cannot lie. He cannot, speaking to his nature, not his will, not he will not lie, or lying is wrong, that's why God doesn't do it. No, he cannot lie. This does not remove from his all-powerful nature, because having the ability to do one more thing does not make you more powerful. And I gave a simple example of in the animal kingdom. Take the strongest bird, take the eagle, the biggest, strongest eagle you can find, and then take the biggest, strongest rat you can find. Oh, not a rat. Take the biggest, strongest bear you can find. Okay? The biggest, strongest one you can find. The bird is not more powerful, dummy, because he can do one more thing than the bear. He can fly. The bear cannot fly. It's not in the nature of the bear to fly. That has no bearing on whether or not the bear is more powerful than the bird. It is not more powerful than the bird because the bird can do one more thing. So that twisted logic, they try to take that twisted logic that doesn't even make sense in from the animal kingdom. It doesn't even make sense, let alone the kingdom of God. It's like ridiculous how dumb these people are. It doesn't make sense in the animal kingdom. So all powerful simply means that there is no being that is more powerful than God. Those other beings can do things that God cannot do. They are still not more powerful. In fact, having the ability to lie is an indication that you are less powerful. Strong people like myself don't have to lie. Not that I don't lie, but people who are confident that they will be successful, don't have to manipulate and lie. It is the weak atheist who has to lie. It is the weak atheist who has to lie to black people about separation of church and state, and then won't allow for a response from a black person who's actually went to school and studied. But they want to keep black people ignorant. That's the job of the white liberal over there on a Sync's channel. I want to keep you ignorant of what history has said about you, what the Bible has said about you. I want to keep you in a welfare state. I want to keep you under my thumb. So any Christian coming over here that is black, that is trying to teach you or educate you or correct you on what happened to you as a people, we're not going to allow that. We're not going to allow that. Okay.
I mean,
but
And
also,
Darth Vader
also
said that-
Quite clear. And if you
John,
didn't know
check the
that,
private
that means
chat,
you didn't
please. There's a
read
message for you in there.
what was that?
and Darth Vader said the darkness is very accepting. They accept all those who survive. All right, so what? This is a story. You want to talk about a story? Let's talk about stories.
That's MC time, ladies and gentlemen. That's the one I invited over here for a one-on-one, but he won't show up. He won't show up.
Who like Star Wars? I like that. You they got different
Who likes Star Wars?
definitions of words too that we don't normally say.
Joe, why
Yeah,
do you think
perfect. Thank you.
why do you
He's
think God
learning.
exists?
He's
Why do you
learning.
think God
You're right. You see, sometimes the atheists think they're refuting you, but in all actuality, they're supporting your view. So he brought up Star Wars. Okay. Yeah, in Star Wars, your definition of lightsaber better be what George Lucas had in mind, the author or the creator of Star Wars. I think that's his name. It better not be what Harry Potter had in mind, when they may have spoken of some sort of light laser or but your definition needs to come if you're going to do an internal critique of omnipotent. You're going to say that the Bible, it's contradictory, the four omni argument, then all of your definitions of omnipotent, omnipotence, or omnipotent need to come from the story itself. Or otherwise, all you're arguing is, well, the lightsaber spoken of in Star Wars contradicts the lightsaber spoken of in Harry Potter. Duh. The omnipotent spoken of in Epicurus contradicts the omnipotent definition-wise spoken of in the Hebrew text. Durr. So you can't use Epicurus in that case, logically speaking, to debunk or make any argument, contradictory arguments against the Bible if you're not using the biblical terms. That's why when you get into debates with liberals like this, define, make them, force them. They won't do it. They'll struggle. They'll cry and complain. They'll try to deflect. Make them define their terms. Right? That's the exercise. Make them define their terms. That's what we're learning.
Why do you think it already exists to begin with, Joe?
So if you want to know what Star Wars means by saber,
huh?
if you want to know what Star Wars mean by saber, you're gonna go where? To Star Wars. You're not gonna go to the Nature Channel.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Job. Good job.
But should I care about it? I mean,
whether you care about it is different than being honest about it.
Yeah, you're right.
And look, they turned my volume all the way down. So now you probably these guys are a bunch of cowards, bro. I have never seen they try to limit me to 2 times a week. That's how destructive I come over with their when I say destructive, I mean destroying their stupid ideas. That's just how afraid they are of me. They turn down my volume, so that when I do speak, I can't be heard. They mute, put backstage. Look, if you guys are into the truth, what's the timer up there for? What's the banning? What's the 2 times a week limitations for? If you're into the truth, you should be able to handle Jill. You're not into the truth. You run from the truth. You should be able to handle it. I can handle any atheist. I don't care if they're cutting me off. I deal with retards all the time, so I can handle atheists. Okay. They got upset that I said the R word on their channel. And they were looking, or Gretchen, whatever her name is, was looking to try to find a reason to kick me. So when I said the R word, she popped in. Problem I have with atheists is that they're not honest. They try to go outside of the text to get the definition and force it into the Bible to say it contradicts. Look, this isn't what God can't be omnipotent because this is my definition of omnipotent that I'm forcing into the Bible. This is my definition of lightsaber. So Darth Vader couldn't have used a lightsaber. This is a contradiction.
I'm not gonna argue the point of the story with you.
You guys are at the bottom of the pit, logically speaking. Because when it comes to logic and reason, you're at the bottom of the pit, in my opinion.
Well, I like the bottom. Who's had a race to the bottom? I win every time.
Like being at the bottom.
Yeah, I'm in the race. I'm a bottom.
What is a lightsaber? What is a lightsaber? What is a lightsaber? Is it what Harry Potter says it is? Or is it what
Luke Skywalker called it a laser sword? He called it a laser sword. That's what Luke Skywalker called it, a laser sword.
So where are we going to get our definition of laser sword from if we're critiquing Star Wars? MC Time, this link is for you or anyone else who dares to come in to challenge me on anything. The Tulip Challenge is next week. I want to save any Tulip discussions for next week. Okay, so don't come in here telling me about how Tulip is wrong. Okay, but the link is there. This is mainly for MC Time. I called him out, and he said he would have a one-on-one with me. So let's see if he shows up. Oh, look, Veckel's in the house, brother Veckel. Can't wait for the Tulip Challenge. Yep, next week. Next week, guys. Veckel, you can come in too if you like, if you can. Anyone can come in actually, but I don't want to have the Tulip Challenge right now. Right, that's next week. And it might not even be Sunday. I don't even know when I'm gonna do it, to be honest with you. But you're at work. Okay. All right. So I was in the room with a bunch of atheists, and I had to correct them on 2 points. One was a point of history, Ali. Separation of church and state. Remember, we dealt with You need this to get through your ship. Remember, Recco, last week we dealt with another major lie that white liberals are teaching blacks, in that in dealing with the big switch, the so-called switch, where Republicans became, or Dixiecrats became Republicans, and Republicans became the Democrats, etc. So the big switch is a big lie, and we demonstrated that. I bet you MC Time believes in the big switch as well. Because why? Because all he hangs around is white liberals. He thinks they're smart. He thinks they're smarter than him. So he looks up to them and he bows down to whatever they say is Bible or scripture. All right, but then there's another big lie floating around that they hate when conservatives, black conservatives, come in and try to speak on this. That's why they stifled me and kicked me out and wouldn't allow me to speak. They hate blacks who are conservatives and are educated on this. The other issue, the other lie that they love to tell black people, like MC Time, ignorant black people, slow, low IQ. You can hear by the way he talks, low IQ, low information. Another lie is the idea of separation of church and state. They tell that lie to white and blacks. They tell that lie to everyone. Okay, and that's not just a racial thing. The idea that when the earliest, when they set up our government, that they were trying to remove religion from our government and from our schools. That is a lie. Okay. And they're still lying to this day. When we ask Gretchen to read the definition, you're going to hear of church and state. That is the definition that they are promoting still to this day. So the lie has never been corrected. They're still promoting this lie. And I debunked it thoroughly from history itself. And they still deny it. They still think that separation of church and state is what the left says it is today. That it means that when they formed the government, they wanted the Bible and Christianity to be removed from the government and from our state institutions like schools. When in all actuality, in their actions, they did the exact opposite of that. So that could not have been what they intended, because they proceeded to set up and put Bibles in every school. So the argument from history is that separation of church and state was them trying to separate from the church state of Rome, and in their case, the Church of England, which was a Protestant church state, which is sub-biblical. The Bible never tells you to set up a church state, whether it's Catholic or Protestant, where you're executing people because they're violating religious things that are dealing with religion. You're putting people to death and excommunicating. That was never set up in the New Testament. No New Testament writer or author ever promoted that type of thing. If anything, when Ananias and Sapphira sinned against God and they sinned against the Holy Spirit and they were lying, when as far as their giving was concerned, God killed them. He didn't set up a tribunal of Paul and the disciples. He didn't set up a tribunal in which they judged her unto death by the state and partnered with the state. No, the state was trying to kill them. The state was trying to off them. Like, all right, but let's get back to the video. So those were the two things here. But yeah, we need to start dispelling some of these myths, because how long are black people going to go on believing these things about America and their position and their place and how they fit in all of these things? And it's a lot, but you're never going to come to MC Time. You're never going to come to a solution or a reason without reason. You're never going to come to a solution of these things without reason. If all you're using is emotion and just going based off of what someone told you and just reacting to that emotionally, you'll never, ever, 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 ever be satisfied. Okay, you'll never be satisfied as far as the truth is concerned. You'll always be confused and seeking, because their job is to confuse you. Their job is to confuse you. Okay, That's Satan's job. That's who is controlling them. We're gonna
But
get it
does it
from
matter, man? Are we living our lives
Adam, man.
by Star Wars? I mean, you're not
So
you're
let's
not
try
you're
with
not you
omnipotence now. Let's try
How
with
about a
omnipotence.
dictionary?
you said you're
No.
not trying to propose us that we should live our life by Jesus Christ and all that stuff, and we're just talking about a story. And I can't really talk to the story because I've read the Bible many times front to back face, but it's been years, and I'm trying to forget it because I regard it as mind pollution. But maybe DJ Arp, I know DJ Arp went to the school on Bible stuff, so he can sit there and talk the story with you all day. I just want to know, is this stuff real, and should I live my life by it? Is there a God? And you said you're not here to do that, so I don't care.
It is. No, RB can't help you. He didn't go to school for anything. I highly doubt he went to school for anything. He doesn't know anything about the Bible, so he can't help you. Okay, come over here for your question if you have a question. Real, and you should live your life by it.
Yeah, but in order
So
for this
what's
to
your
also be
objective?
real, we need to establish that this God exists first, right?
He's
Is
not
that
going to have
correct?
that conversation. He runs away from like any sort of like philosophical God proof.
Oh, okay. That's the only reason why.
He hides in the Bible.
Another lie. I'm on tacos. When I was allowed on tacos, I presented my philosophical argument from morality, and he ran like the coward that God made you. You guys are cowards. And then they'll argue, nobody is arguing, nobody is debating. Yes, we are. You're running from those who want to debate. You're stifling conversation with those who want to have them. It's obvious. Look at your panel. Look at your panel, dude. Come on, bro. So there are no Christians except for me who want to come on your channel. You had one Christian on, and you have an 8-hour, 9, 10-hour streams with one Christian on, if anything. And that would be me. So don't sit up here and tell me, oh, we're having discussion. No, you're not. You are afraid to engage with Christians. Frightened. And not one do I not see one of these idiots on any Christian channel challenging Christians. They only come to these echo chambers. Do you know best? Never saw him ever on a Christian channel. You see me on Christian channels, agnostic channels, black atheist channels. What? Bring it. Bring it. We have the truth. We stand on the truth. You don't. You hide. You hide in echo chambers and set up timers where Christians can only speak for 10 seconds before you ask them another question that you don't allow them to answer.
Because he's incapable of having that conversation.
I had that conversation with Taco before he decided that his argument wouldn't work.
Yeah, we're not Taco. Never say that name here.
Oh,
Yeah.
now he gets offended. He was proven an idiot. Oh, you don't have those. Jews don't like to have a conversation. I brought up a time where I did have that conversation with an atheist. Don't talk about Taco. Don't talk about Taco. I was wrong, but don't talk about Taco. I had those.
Do you have a reason?
I have those
It's going to be
conversations.
completely irrelevant of the Bible or like God's omnipotent, maximal, or
I like
anything
using
like
the
that.
moral argument for God's existence. I think that's the best, the strongest argument for God's existence.
You only have
Moral
subjective
argument?
morals within the Christian framework.
Subjective to God, yeah. So we
No, they're subjective wholesale because you need to have a reason to do what God says. If you don't have a reason to do that, then it cannot be normative because morals.
So this is another case in which the atheist is making assertions that never were made. We don't believe that there is no reason to do them. There are several reasons why God says we should do them, and empirically we can support that through the social sciences. Don't do this. Why? Not because God says so. Yeah, because God says so. So both are true. But it's not arbitrary. We can use science, dummy, to figure out why God tells you not to insert certain things in certain places without being graphic, stupid. So it's not just arbitrarily made up because God said it. It is. No, God said it because it is. That's reality. Reality is that doesn't work. That goes against nature, your nature. So you can pick out other animals if you'd like and say, look what they're doing, but that's their nature. They have a different nature than your nature, dummy. So, yes, when the Bible says don't do something, it means don't do it because there is a reason why you shouldn't do it. Because it harms you. That's why. God cares about you. That's why he says don't do it. That's why he puts the punishment at death for those who do it. Because that's how harmful it is. Now, that hurt your feelings? Too bad. Now, if you were told, hey, it's not harmful, it's not, it is healthy, it is natural. If you were lied and told that you won't be able to produce not one shred of scientific evidence for this notion. You won't be able to produce not one proctologist that will substantiate that. You won't be able to produce that, but you'll be able to produce propaganda, what people are saying in the cosmopolitan newspapers, perhaps the magazine, where they're saying it there, but you will not find a PhD saying it because they'll lose their license. Dummy. They'll lose their license. So when the Bible prescribes something, when it says do not do it, it is saying and don't do it for a good reason, for the well-being of his creation, human beings, for their well-being. Don't do this, don't eat this, etc.
Are by definition normative, and normative means that they are reason giving. If the
and there are reason giving, you just fail to accept the fact that God gives reasons. You fail to accept the fact that we can see the results, that we can see why he says don't do it. Don't stick anything up there unless it's a prostate exam, unless you're checking for some sort of disease that can kill you as well, then you would do that. But other than that, don't do it. It's going to harm you. That's the reason. It's harmful. We've studied this. Talk to a proctologist. They will tell you that behavior is harmful, deadly even. So there is a reason. You just ignored the reason because you wanted to continue to do what you felt was natural, what you felt was good.
Reason is lacking, then they are not reason giving, therefore not normative, and therefore not amoral.
That's his assertion. But when in debate, he'll be cross-examined. That's why he stays away from debate. And in the cross-examination, I would say what I just said. It is normative. It is instructive. And we can see the results of those who don't follow. They suffer and die.
Yeah, how do you
So-
go from some sense of moral realism to God exists, or like some divine command theory to like God exists?
It's just word salad. So
It's not
No,
word
no,
salad.
no, it's
you want
not.
to hear my argument?
Your inability to track does not mean that it's actually
Oh, we tracked you quite well. It's word salad because it was nothing but assertions. No Christian argues this. That it's arbitrary, that it's divine command theory. No one argues this way. This is what your straw man is that you prop up just to knock it down to say you defeated Christianity. Divine command theory. Nowhere in the Bible does it say divine command theory is true. Divine command theory doesn't take into consideration the fact that there is a reason why God says don't do it. It's just saying you shouldn't do it because God says not to do it. But there is a reason, and that reason can be empirically discerned. It's not even necessarily spiritually discerned. It's backed up by the sciences. Don't eat this. Don't do that. Don't do this. Don't bend your arm backwards beyond its bend. It's called a broken arm, dummy, when you do that. So don't do it. Don't jump off of 13 flights of stairs. You'll break both your legs. You're not doing it because the doctor told you not to do it. There's a reason why the doctor says don't do it. Derp. Derp. Not doctor command theory. Stupid. Doctor command theory. Divine command theory. You're doing it because God said don't do it. That's the only reason, right? Yeah.
Sell it now.
These guys will get destroyed in debate, and the only ones dumb enough to debate me is OE. That's the only one in this group dumb enough. The rest of them know their place. They know their place. Now OE is new to this game, so he just came on the debate scene in YouTube, and he doesn't realize that you're not going to win these debates. These guys have probably been around a little bit longer than OE. So
divine command theory will definitionally always level out and subject to morality.
I mean, do you know
so you see how he tried to infuse the assertion of divine command theory, which Christians don't make? Christians do not argue that it's wrong because God says it's wrong. Instead, God says it's wrong because it's harmful. Bad behavior, wrong behavior leads to, there are consequences. The Bible speaks of consequences. So if you decide to shoot yourself up with a bunch of foreign substances like heroin, guess what the consequences? The consequences are completely natural. You will suffer. Okay, unless there's some sort of miracle. You'll suffer and die. Your OD, we call overdose. So, thou shalt not shoot up heroin. Oh, wow. Oh. Dummies. God.
Like I'm presuming that you accept divine command theory, right? Or maybe you have some other.
You accept divine command theory because they think that's the alternative. That's the false dichotomy. It's either divine command theory or what? No, dummy. No, stupid. The Bible, the reason why God puts parameters around human interactions with other animals, with each other, okay, is because he wants what's best for us. So he says, do not have relations with your cousin or your sister, because he knows at this point in human evolution, at this point, doing so would lead to children being born deformed, etc. So don't do it. Do not have relations with an animal. Why? Because God knew about zoophilia, some pronounce it. It's diseases you can catch, and there are a ton of them, just by interacting with animals in that way. God knew about those things. They didn't. Okay? So it's not divine command theory, stupid. God is not just saying don't do this because I'm God. He's saying don't do this because I'm God, and I know that doing these things, because I created your bodies, stupid. I know that if you do this, if you practice this, you're going to get hurt. If you promote this behavior to children, God, whew, that's where he steps in. That's why he wiped out the Amalekites. Good riddance. Because they were teaching horrible things to children as a society. So he says this society cannot exist. Okay? There's a reason why he wiped out certain Canaanite groups. Is because of the practices. They were practicing child sacrifice, bestiality, homosexuality. And these behaviors we can prove scientifically, are very destructive as far as our well-being is concerned, as far as our humanity, our human nature is concerned. The divine command theory, they think that's what the Bible teaches. So they're stuck. When we say, nope, that's not what the Bible teaches, they're stuck. Well, that was my argument. That's what I was going to argue against. Because you're arguing a straw man. You propped up. You're arguing a straw man. You can't really argue against the Bible what it actually says. You have to make up something it says, or that it says, supposedly, and then argue against that. Know what the argument is from morality? Or do I need to present it in like a syllabus?
It depends on which you're arguing for, particularly with morality.
Yeah, it sounds like you have an atypical rendering.
About subjective moral. Are you talking about what are you talking about exactly? Go ahead. No, I'm asking you. I'm not trying to be facetious or anything. Go ahead. I'm really curious.
Well, first and foremost, when we make the, where's MC Tom at? He ain't showing up. He probably still on the stream. He's not going to show up. The argument for God, it is traditionally, historically, always philosophical, because even the ancients knew that God cannot be proven in a test tube. Okay, or there's no evidence for God um, that can be bottled in a test tube that we can say, here, there he is, there it is. Told you, God exists. Okay,
Yeah.
so all of the arguments ever made, Kant and up to William Lane Craig, have always been
Oh God.
philosophical. Okay.
Yeah. Good thing I'm not referring to
All
test
right.
tubes or anything
So
like that,
premise
right?
one: if God does exist, or wait, if God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. Uh, Premise two would be objective moral values and duties do exist, therefore God exists.
Yeah,
Okay.
I simply disagree with premise one. It's unsound.
And
Okay.
there are so many examples of different moral systems existing without a need for a God at all.
I'm a moral realist, so I'll accept.
Was that the argument, that moral systems couldn't exist? God. Yeah, you can create a moral system based off of some objective standards. That's why you have laws against murder and rape. Okay, those are standards objectively. Okay, so again, I don't know. I don't know what the atheist is arguing. There really is no rebuttal to these arguments. You just say I disagreed, and that's fine. You disagree.
To, but P1 is just straight up unsound and undemonstrable.
It's unsound. Not can't say how, but it's just unsound.
Yeah, if you want to.
Why?
I mean, most people who are like atheists and stuff, they're like moral realists. So
Okay.
Wow.
I don't see how that establishes God's existence at all.
By objective, we mean that something is true independent of human opinion.
No. It's true in all
This is another one of
cases.
those Bible
That's what we-
definitions.
No, that's not the definition. It's true in all cases. No. So and this is a problem with atheists when they don't understand objective morality, or what we mean by it, at least. Murder is wrong, but is it wrong in all cases? Well, now you're going to argue, well, when the state does it, it's not murder, but yeah, because we've specifically defined murder as an unjust killing. So an unjust killing, by definition, is always immoral. So murder is always immoral. Now, killing someone, you'd have to give the circumstances. Is it a just? Is the killing just? Is it self-defense? But here's what we say about objective morality. Once you hash all those details, the nuance and details out, in every given circumstance, considering all of those parameters and details, there is a right way and a wrong way. Once all the circumstances are considered, there's a right answer and then there's a wrong answer. The right answer is what the Bible says about this scenario. Okay, that's objective. And it's always right. The Bible is always right about these questions, or these concern, or these questions about life or marriage and etc. It's always right, 100% correct for all cultures that ever existed, from the very first culture to the very last. What God says about that scenario is true, objectively. That's what we mean by objective morality. We don't mean that punching someone in the mouth is objectively wrong. That's not what we mean by. We are saying that once all of the circumstances are considered, there is a right and then there's a wrong answer, or a right or wrong way. So I'm going to also tell you the detail that I punched this person, broke their jaw after they pulled a gun out on me. Okay? If I didn't give you that detail, you would say I was wrong. But because you know all the details, you now can determine based off of scripture, which says self-defense is allowed. In this case, it would not be wrong to punch them in the face because you're defending yourself. So in the case of punching someone or hitting someone, they'll say, well, it's not objective. Yes, it is. The objective morality still applies there. It's either right or wrong. That's what we mean by objective morality. Right versus wrong. An act is either righteous or it's wicked. There is no in between. And we have Bible to back that up, of course. Objective.
Because you got to keep in mind, he got two different lexicon. He got the way we talk, and he got the confusing way out the Bible.
Well, yeah, they did
more realism,
the way we talk, and then the confusion when the definition is out the Bible.
More realism, and anti-realism, like meta-ethical.
But if you're like also with respect to logical language, like if you're going to construct a logical syllogism, then what objective is prescribed. You don't get to insert your own understanding of what objective is. Objective is stance independence.
Yeah, that's what I just said, which is what I just said.
Objective is stance dependent.
True. My definition, if you didn't get it, because I know I'm stopping and starting. My definition of objective I gave was this: something that is true independently of human opinion, which is what he just said, independently. Okay. So murdering someone is wrong. Universal. That's a universal factual truth. The unjust killing of someone, even if it's an unborn child, is murder, and it's wrong. Okay. And there is no specific culture or dictator claim about it being acceptable will change the fact that it's wrong, according to scripture. Okay. What the atheist loves to do is they'll bring up something like killing someone, and they'll say it's killing. Is that objectively wrong? Well, you're not giving us any, you're not telling me whether it's a just killing or not. You're just saying it's too arbitrary. It's not specific. Murder is more specific. It's an unjust, meaning you didn't have a right to do it. Of course, we say that right comes from God. You say that right comes from society. Society didn't tell you could do it, so it's wrong. Independently of human opinion. That's what I said.
You know, when people use definitions of words, they make communication hard, right?
Well, that's why it's good to define your terms before you get into these discussions, and that's what I just did.
I know, but yeah,
so what is
but you gotta...
It's the same thing that it is to me. And then the premise one, we're arguing that without a supreme moral lawgiver, personal lawgiver, there is no anchor for right or wrong. There's no justification for right or wrong.
Yeah, we rejected that, and we gave you
fine. You reject that. So Ted Bundy didn't.
We go, but still. So now you got to keep in mind that the Bible morality doesn't,
because you reject
doesn't even much have the word well-being in it. It's not. It's not. It's about worship, and worship may be antithetical to somebody's well-being. And what is the point? And then
Jeremiah 29 says that. I
don't care what Jeremiah 29 says. Can you give me a reason to care what Jeremiah 29 says?
Jeremiah 29 answers your question directly, that God does want us to be prosperous, and that's why he says to follow me, because all of what God tells us to do, if we do it, we will be prosperous. And I can demonstrate that's the case based on the social sciences. The people who are actually following what God tells you to eat, what God tells you to marry, are actually successful. How God tells you to manage your money properly. They're just successful people. The people who are listening to what you're telling people to do in history or in societies fail miserably. Going even from the political positions that you take, fail. Socialism fails. Fail. Capitalism,
don't seem like it to me.
what God promotes, it's successful in its
It
implication.
don't seem like it to me because, like, all right, in 1776 they invented
The
this thing
Bible
called
is not
second.
just don't seem like it to me because in 1776 I was a slave, boy. So the Bible is not just telling you these things just because it is giving you these things because it wants you to be prosperous.
But I mean, it don't seem like it to me. If everything, it seems like the more we get away from God belief, the better things work. In 1776, they invented this thing called secular government that finally got rid of the slavery that is mentioned in Leviticus 25:44.
The secular government finally got rid of this guy. Is just so ignorant on his history. So ignorant. My God. The secular government, he didn't realize that the secular government existed for 16 presidents before the Emancipation Proclamation. This so-called secular government didn't get rid of anything. It was Christians within the secular government. It was Christians in England within their secular government or church state, whatever they had. Within that fought William Wilberforce, that fought for the freedom of slaves and lost their lives, went to their deaths. Christians, not one atheist advocate came out for slaves. Not one white liberal atheist advocate in the history of slavery came out and fought and organized like we did, like Christians did, against slavery. Christians were the only voice, pretty much. Atheists were silent because they're the ones who had all the slaves.
Then the advent of medicine came along, and the more we got out of science and medicine, the better it worked.
Whoa! Now I got to give you a U.S. history lesson. What?
No, it's not U.S. history. I'm talking
Abraham
about
Lincoln
second
was
government.
which
It's a
president? What
more
number?
than
Abraham Lincoln was what? Which president? What number?
He came after the secular government was invented.
Right.
So it
but
don't
how
matter
long
which number.
Right. But when did this occur? What president was he? He didn't know. He didn't know. He didn't know. This is what I'm talking about. Low IQ, low information, man. Beckel. This is what I'm talking about. He didn't know that Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president, but that's besides the fact. The 16th. Right?
Only 150 years after the second government is invented, but thousands of years after the rise of Christianity and the minority and Christian empires and it's what I mean. Do you think that would have happened under a Christian government like the 2,000 years prior?
I think they.
I mean, keep in mind, slavery.
Yes, it did happen in a Christian Europe before Muhammad arrived. From the 5th to the 10th century, there were no chattel slaves. The Christians never set up a market of slaves because that is not what is prescribed in the Christian faith or in the Bible. It's described, OE. It is described in the Bible because in the Bible there is war. And in war, you take captives. We still do that today in war. Okay, and the captives were called aveds, the word that was translated into slave. But when you are not at war, you do not set up your country to include slave trafficking or the trafficking of humans or controlling people in a way in which they are not voluntarily submitting to God. Remember when Ananias and Sapphira lied on the Holy Spirit, they were not brought to the magistrate and executed by the state. Paul didn't say, well, you guys got to come with us. He didn't set up a tribunal because they were lying and they were supposed to be Christians and they were lying on the Holy Spirit. He didn't set up a tribunal and execute them publicly. The hell? So they were escaping that. 97% of the people who came over here from England were Protestants. They were escaping other Protestants who set up a church state. So the difference between the church state Protestant and the Protestants that came over here and set up this government. And when they set this government up, they were smart and ensure that the persecution they face could never happen here, because all religions were accepted. Not all, but all religions were accepted, but you couldn't practice certain things if they included harming people. Like you can be a Satanist, but you couldn't sacrifice animals or anything like. Couldn't be doing no crazy stuff. Okay, so they set up a government in which Christianity would thrive. Christianity, they felt, would thrive in that motif because Christianity would win out in the debate scene, just talking it out. We always win these debates if we're allowed to debate. So what the Roman Catholics did was they stopped you from debating. We say this is the case. We don't care what you say. You say something different, you're going to put to death. That's exactly what they have over there on this channel. They think they have a government, a secular government, a church state, if you will, a secular church state. The abolitionists were Christians, all of them.
Well, it don't matter. Do you think that
it don't matter? The abolitionists were Christians, sir. It don't matter. I'm still going to be an atheist when the atheist didn't say anything about your butt being a slave. Where are the atheists advocating for your freedom? Where are they? Yeah, you were put in chains because someone perverted Genesis 5 or Genesis 3, I think, where it talks about the curse of Ham. They say, look, you're a descendant of Ham, right? But people say, because Ham means black. No, it doesn't. Ham means hot. Ooh, oh, you're a descendant of Ham, right? Well, there you go. The Bible says Ham is cursed. I'll be John Brown. I'll be John Brown. Remember, John Brown was a white Christian. And he says, no, buddy, I can read. You're lying to these people. You're lying to these Africans. I'm going to a revolt, and they all got killed. But but the white liberal, he would be considered a conservative. He would be on our side today, John Brown. Because he tried to free the slaves because he could read the Bible and he could see that they were being manipulated. Science was also manipulated, not just the Bible. We don't throw out all of science. We don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Just because people perverted science. 19th century German anthropologists came up with a gradation of races, and they perverted Darwin's theory. We know this happened. So don't try to take the fact that people perverted the text to then suggest that the text is actually communicating such. You're making the same error that they made by claiming the perversion of a text is the actual meaning. Don't find a text or an idea or a concept by its perversion. Matter they were Christians, right?
No, yeah, no, because if it wasn't for the secular government,
the slavers were Christians too.
Where were the atheist organizations protesting?
The slavers were Christians too, and they used the Bible to justify their slavery.
They used the Bible, they perverted the Bible. You see how he tries to say they used it as if they were using it in a proper manner or rendering what the text was saying properly. They abused it. That's the proper term. They abused the text in order to promote their slavery. Had they been using the text, they would have had to put themselves to death. The transatlantic slave trade would have never happened. It would have never happened. Okay? So we don't define a concept by its perversion. We recognize the people perverted the truth, and they used the Bible under the banner of Christianity to promote their slavery. But there were Christians like John Brown, allow me John Brown, who shut you up, who show you that not all Christians read the Bible, misinterpret the Bible, or pervert the text the way you do and the way your ancestors did to blacks.
Yeah.
Where was the Bible, like you're doing today?
The
Where
Christian,
was
but
the
think about
atheist?
the
Where were
secular
the atheists
environment.
organized? Name
The
the
whole
atheist
environment was
organization.
atheist, man. The whole environment, the
Name the
secular
atheist.
environment that
Name the
fosters the
atheist
abolition.
organization.
Some of the things this guy says makes zero sense. That's why I wanted him to come over here and have a conversation so I can try to understand what this man is saying, because half of what he says makes zero sense. I don't even think he know. He's like, my response to him is what Trump said to Biden during that debate. I don't even think. I think you know what you said just now. He told Biden. I don't even think he knows what he just said. He told the moderator. That's how I feel listening to this guy make time.
Name the atheist.
You want to split. You want to look at the minutia and split hairs on.
Show me the writings. Show me the history.
You want to look at the minutia. Anyone that tells you don't look at the details, just look at this them surface level, is probably lying or they've been lied to. That's why I invited this black man for a one-on-one, because these white liberals have been lying to him his entire life. And he sounds like he's in his 40s and he still believes in separation, their definition of separation, church and state. He still believes in their definition of the big switch. He still believes in their redefining our history, their redefinition of our history. He still believes it. That's why I invited him for a one-on-one, because when I was trying to bring out what really happened in the history of blacks in this country, the white liberals got upset and they began cutting me off. They began looking for excuses to kick me. So then I just said, hey, I'm just going to invite you to my channel. And they didn't like that either, but who cares?
Writings of atheist groups.
1776. The Constitution has made no mention of God. That's the writings there. It makes no mention of God and none of that stuff. And this is the government that.
Did you read your Declaration of Independence, genius?
It makes no mention of God. Only say God like one twice at one point.
It only says God like at one point. That's all it needs to say. All I need to do. This is basically what the. You think I'm losing my signal? Yeah, I might be. My internet sometimes goes in and out. But where was I? Yeah, so he was bringing up, this is about separation of church and state, and social studies. I'm going to educate. Okay,
them people knew the Bible too, and they didn't put none of that stuff, none of the Bible stuff in there. None of your crazy definitions none of your crazy definitions are in the Constitution, all the Bill of Rights.
All right, so none of my definition. All right, he said, well, it only says it once in the Bible, in the Constitution. Now, I don't think it says in the Constitution, but in the Declaration of Independence, it does mention your creator, and it argues against atheism. It says that's how we know they weren't atheists. Okay, they were deists. It says that your rights don't come from government. This is in direct opposition to what you believe, liberal. But you're trying to push onto us today because you think we're ignorant of our founding fathers. They said that their rights come from God, which you believe does not exist. So if your rights don't come from God, where do they come from? Government. But how can you free yourself, stupid, from that government if you believe that is where your rights derive from? So in order to free themselves from the tyrannical government, well, my government is good, so if they want to be the origin of my rights, then so be it. Well, they can take away your rights. So the idea is that you did not initially give me rights to be free. The rights to be free and is inherent. It is innate. It's inherently found because God gave it to us. God gave it to everyone. Okay. Then we had the little civil rights issue where some people were saying, well, no, it's only whites that it's given to. Okay. Yeah, we had to go through that period in our history. Great. But the idea is that if you're a human, God gave you those rights to be free, to be independent of anyone else telling you what's right or wrong. We are endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights, meaning they cannot be, they are not derived from anything else other than God. Anything else other than God. Inalienable rights. They cannot be taken. They cannot be transferred to government. They cannot be surrendered or taken away by government. They're inherent and absolute. And they come from God, not from government. That's the point they did not want me to help the black man out with. They did not want to help the black man out with understanding where their rights come from. Why? Because disgusting white liberals like we have on Gretchen's channel, homosexuals, white liberals in general, they want the black man to believe, and also ignorant white liberals, poor people, that their rights come from government, that their rights ultimately come from them. We are the ones that give you welfare. We're the ones that give you food. We're the ones that give you shelter. We're the ones that give you your freedom to move about in this specific area. Don't go to my neighborhood. Don't show up in my neighborhood, but you're free to roam your projects. Your freedom comes from us and the laws that we set up for you to follow. That's why you're free. The founding fathers, whether they were truly Christian or not, is irrelevant. They knew how to stop you in the future because they came from a church state. They were escaping a church state. And they did not want their government, their country, and their people to have to deal with that. So they set up a government that's not secular. It's secular in the sense that you get to choose. That's the only secular part. It's not a theocracy. In a theocracy, you don't have a choice. In a secular government in which Christianity is being promoted as the true only religion, you set up now what's called the public square. Now you have a public square in which these things can be debated and reasoned out and determine whether or not which is more optimal, which position about God makes the most sense. So that's where we have now the birth of the public square. The internet would not have existed if it weren't for where people can have their own, share ideas that are in opposition, if it weren't for Christians, if it weren't for the Christian God. The Christian God is the reason why you have the freedom right now you have. They had no other way out. What other way out? And that's the question I kept asking. They could not respond to. How else are you going to free yourself from a church state? Are you going to say, well, our rights come from you, and therefore we have the right to not obey you? Huh? You think that's going to work? Logically, you think that's going to work? Huh? Wait a minute. We're the ones that gave you your rights and your freedom. We're the ones that gave it to you. So, no. Instead, they were smart. They weren't as dumb as you. Look, they could have made up the entire God concept. They could have secretly been atheists, but they weren't stupid. Like you are, trying to totally remove God from the picture. They instead said, yeah, God exists. And he's the one that gave us these rights. You didn't. Therefore, you can't take them away. So go read your Declaration of Independence. The next time some idiot tells you that separation of church and state means that we are to remove the Bible and God from our government, is lying to you. They have an agenda. That was not the agenda of the colonial move, the colonialists, the early settlers, or the founding fathers. Certainly, we know this. We know this is a fact.
Because then people knew the Bible back then too, and enforced the whole environment for slavery to be abolished. So I mean, yeah, maybe they had some people on both sides that were Christian and not, but the whole environment was due to the secular atmosphere that was created by the secular government. Now keep in mind that was 2,000 years after, because Christianity was 2,000 years running with slavery and all of the hardships. The reason why the Pilgrims came over here in the first place. Okay, so that was Christianity. Christianity presided over.
Are you done?
No.
Okay.
Well, let me just say this one more. No, I got one more point, and then I'll be done.
Go ahead. Waste our time. Go ahead. Continue. I got one more irrelevant factoid.
Christianity presided over the Dark Ages, the Crusades, the witch trials, all of that. But as soon as it leaves, now that's for thousands of years. As soon as it leaves, then we start abolishing shit like slavery. Now you go ahead, Jill. The floor is yours.
All right. So let me. Slavery was abolished as early as Exodus 21. Let my people go. Educate you on the history of your country, okay? Because you weren't taught this. I'm sure. I know you weren't taught this. Because I taught in schools where you were learning, when you were learning, probably 20 years ago. All right. So historically, America, they did not embrace all Christian values. What they did was to free themselves, because they came over here as a colony, or they were a colony to Great Britain. To free themselves, however, from the tyranny of Great Britain, they used God. So read your Declaration of Independence. You don't have a constitution until you're free, dummy. You can't reject God. You can't have the freedom to reject God until you impose God's moral prerogative onto your entire situation. So what
That's a genetic fallacy.
What they did was this. This is brilliant. You see, he's getting spurging. Mr. Arpy there starting to spurg out. He's getting upset. He realized he can't refute what I just said. That's a genetic fallacy. I didn't make a genetic fallacy. Like, what are you talking about? It's a fact that when the founding fathers wrote a document, dummy, I'm not saying they all believed the same thing or believed even in the document they created. Some of them secretly, maybe they were opposed. No one is including every single American in this decision to come up with God as the reason as to why we should leave. We can leave. We can leave. Can and should and would, whatever. The idea is that when they realized that God was the only way out. Secular ideas cannot get you out of tyranny, dummy, because the laws that were created by the tyrannist. So how can you get from underneath a law that was designed to keep you in bondage? The only way out they saw was not secularism. The way that they chose to get out of this tyranny, whether it be by the church and the state combined or not, or whether it be from a secular dictator. The only way out they saw, because they were smarter than you, the only way out they saw was God. They said, I know you gave us food. I know you set this whole thing up. I know you set the government up. I know the church is backing you. And this is all from God. All of the laws that you've placed and the taxes and the burden, that's all from God because you are a sovereign state. You are a church state. You talk like this. Okay, we know that, but we're saying something different. We're saying that God himself, not his church, God himself gives us these rights. And they cannot be removed. They're inalienable. They cannot be removed or changed by a human government, even if that human government is a church government. Very simple. But they don't teach black people this. Instead, they teach them about the slaves coming in. This is all they teach black people. This is why I taught when I started teaching civics, I didn't start with slavery. So sick of these black liberals starting our children's history, black history, with slavery. I started with Reconstruction. Yeah. I started with Reconstruction. Boy, they was mad. Them white liberals were pissed. I know they was. I know they were running up down district talking about how Mr. Joe is starting black history with Reconstruction. I know they ran up to the told superintendent on me. I know. But there's nothing you can do. There's nothing they can do about it. All right, ain't nothing they can do. Because this is special, this special ed. So I teach what I want to teach. You know. Because otherwise they'd be sitting there just doing nothing. So it's good. So the fact that they're learning something, you know, able to get them to sit down and learn something, that's a positive. So you want to get rid of me and bring them some other guy that's going to teach them about slavery, go right ahead. But I digress. Brilliant. The founding forefathers, I'll always respect them, even though they were not necessarily Christian. I will always respect them because of their intelligence. What they did was to free themselves. Remember, because in order to say I don't need to worship God, you got to have freedom from Britain, because Britain's going to force you to do some things. Okay. And the Queen is going to force you to do some things because these are Roman Catholics primarily, and these are Protestants who are basically Roman Catholics. They operate in the same way. Geneva was just as wicked as Rome. Okay. Geneva would put you to death just as quick as Rome. Okay, so they were fleeing. Hold on, bro. I'm giving you a history lesson. This might take some time. So they were
You're gish galloping. Get to the point.
They were fleeing that persecution. They were running from that type of government, state government, where state and church are combined. Okay, and then
incorrect. The Pilgrims came over here because they wanted to impose even stricter religious.
Okay, so the Puritans. That's incorrect. Because he feels that the laws that the Puritans had were even stricter. What? So the Puritans were putting people to death? So because they had a more of a separatist strict law. Even the church today, they are the most extreme when it comes to separatism. Stupid. Why are you trying to gaslight us? Because you think we're idiots. You think that we won't go back and fact check you on the detail. They were really extreme when it came to separatism. They were not extreme when it came to persecuting other people and putting them to death. They were peaceful. They wanted peace from that. They wanted escape from that. 97% of the people were Protestants, about 2% Catholic. And then you had the Quakers and you had the smaller separatist group, which were not the majority, first and foremost. So you're lying again, RP, as your custom. He's so cute. As his custom to lie. Because your father is the liar, Satan. Okay? The father of lies. 97% of the people who came over here were Protestants. They were protesting against the Catholic Church.
They were Puritans.
They were Puritans. Okay, they were Puritans, and their extreme behavior had nothing to do with persecuting people for what they believed or their religious or their religion, excuse me. So when you say they were more harsh or they were more strict, be honest and tell people what that entails. Strict regarding what? Because we're talking about when we're saying they left, the strictness that they were leaving was the fact that people were being put to death by the church state. They were not escaping separatism. In fact, separatism was part of their escape. They didn't want anything to do with government because of the separation of church and state. Oh, God. Like, you're just proving my point. You're proving my point. If you're going to say 97% of them were Quakers and separatists, whatever, great, that's fine. I don't think that's factual, but that's besides the point. It's a red herring. The fact that they were separated, they were separatists because that was the idea. We don't want to be in a church state. We want to separate. We don't even want to pay taxes in some cases because we don't want to be a part of this society or the government or the state. Separation of church and state. And what did they do? They put Bibles in all their schools. They put Bibles in their schools. So separation of church and state, thank you, RV, does not mean removing the Bible from church and state or removing God from church and state. It means removing tyranny and church states and abuse. It means separating from government. The church was to be separate from the government, and the government was not to interfere. So if I want to put Bibles in my school, you can't tell me, Roman Catholic, what Bible. You can't tell me it. No, I can't have Bibles in my school because of separation of church and state. Your definition of separation of church and state is not the definition historically. You changed the definition because you're wicked. And I'm demonstrating this right in front of you on your channel, and you're upset about that.
To enact an even stricter religious theocracy.
Jill,
Well, let
Jill,
me
the
know when
church, the church,
an even stricter religious theocracy. But what did that entail? Their theocracy included them being separate from government and being able to control their own communities with the Bible as a guide. Dummy. That's obvious to this day. That is their stance. Their stance is leave us alone. And it was a good thing they did that because people like you came and perverted church and state and removed the Bibles and forced the Bibles out of schools. So the Quakers would be against that. But they had already separated, so they were able to keep their Bibles in their school because they had already separated from the government before it went corrupt, before it went really bad, the modern government. And they started perverting these ideas just so that they can push their agendas. So you had Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and you had men and women in the 60s perverting church and state and perverting what actually happened so that people would think, and they still think ignorantly to this day, that separation of church and state meant that the church or the Christian ideals and the Bible should be removed from government and schools. That is not what separation of church and state is. Not. Simply not.
England is a Protestant organization.
All right,
They were
so-
not
so we're here-
the people who came from England fleeing religious persecution absolutely wanted to create a more theocratic system than the one that they were quote unquote running from.
Okay, and again, now he's regurgitating the stupid argument, the argument that's lying by omission. You don't travel halfway across the world, across an ocean, to escape someone's marriage law because they say you can get a divorce, and we want to live in a country where divorce isn't allowed. So let's go and hop on our boats and go all the way over here to the Atlantic to set up a more strict theocracy in which we can never get divorced. Stupid, stupid, stupid atheists. The dumbest people on the planet, I told you guys. So, yes, they wanted a stricter government, and that stricter government would not include the government, or they wanted a stricter church or more of a theocracy, which did not include the state. It was the state that was the problem, not the church. It was the state combining with the church, or the church state. That is what they were escaping. Every attempt to try to refute me on this point is just making you look more and more stupid, atheist.
Exactly.
With
These are the
respect to,
Puritans.
you're
And the
being
Declaration of
ahistorical here.
Independence does not mention fucking God. It says
The
a creator, not a god.
It it says creator, not a god. Oh god, I don't even have time to even entertain that dumb comment because I gotta get to work soon. Says a creator, not God. It's not a legal document giving you rights. It is a document that is declaring to those who say they give you rights, basically owning you, that we are free. We are now free. We are independent. We are declaring our independence from you and your rights and your laws. And the reason why we have the right to do this, listen, Grinch, is because our Creator gave us these rights, not you. Then, once I declare myself independent of you by using God, by using a creator figure, not atheism, not secularism, but they used a creator, something you don't believe exists, right? Right, liberal? Once they declared themselves independent, then they set up their government, free of any interference from the church state. Makes sense now? Glad I can help you.
The Declaration of Independence, all that is a fucking, it's a mutiny document. It doesn't actually do anything for anybody.
It's a mutiny document. This is why it's important to have good teachers like Jill, social studies teachers that can teach and actually give you the facts and not, it's a mutiny document. Yes, it is a document of rebellion. They were rebelling, but what reason did they give? It wasn't a secular argument. They made an argument from a perspective of a deist, that God exists, a creator exists that gives all human beings the rights, their rights. They're endowed. They're not given. Let me read you your Declaration of Independence. Because some of these liberals, they haven't read it. Okay. So they asserted then that these human equality and rights come from God, and that the only purpose of government was to protect these rights. So the government doesn't give you the right, it can't take it away. Its job is to protect those inalienable rights. And their power is to be derived by the ones who are being governed. That is what Christianity has done. Christianity and Athens. Got to give Athens some credit. I give them some credit. 10%. You get 10%. But this is what God sets up in the New Testament. Government existed to protect us. That's why Paul appeals to the government when he was being killed. When they were trying to kill Paul, he appealed to the government. He said, I have rights. These people don't believe in God, but God allows them to govern me to protect my rights, the rights that God gave me. That's what the Apostle Paul taught. That's what John taught. That's what Jesus taught. Pay unto Caesar what's under Caesar, what's due unto Caesar. Pay your taxes. Because the government is here to protect the rights that I gave you. Speaking of God, God gives us. The government exists to protect the rights that were given to you by God. That is a biblical concept that comes from the Bible. Okay? Atheist? Oh boy. There really is no rebuttal to these arguments. This is why they ran and hid and muted me and turned my volume down to almost zero and act like atheists. They're acting like atheists. Okay. They have no response, no rebuttal. And that poor black kid, that poor black guy in his 40s, McTine, he's never going to know the truth because he doesn't know how to act independently. He has to stay in his echo chamber where people are feeding this misinformation. And he can never talk to another brother, another black man who thinks differently, who understands history differently. He's going to allow a white liberal to tell him how to think. Unfortunately, there are a lot of black men who are stuck in that the sunken place.
Buddy, there's your history lesson, Jill.
All right, so that was my history lesson, which did not correspond to history at all, because we already knew. Actually, it did. It's a red herring, or not? Red herring. We already knew that the Declaration of Independence was simply declaring their independence, and the Constitution, which came later, was declaring what those rights are that they have, specifically what those rights are: own a gun and right to bear arms, etc. But before you can come up with what specifically your rights are, before you can come up with your list of what you want from a Baskin Robbins, you first need to be independent. How do you free yourself so that you are now able to make a list of laws that you want to add to your society? That's what the Declaration of Independence does. They had you as a secularist would have been stuck with Great Britain. You would have had no valid argument, whether God exists or not. A secular argument does not free you from tyranny. You'd be still talking like this, mate. Or is that Australia?
Further says that the United States is not a Christian nation. It clarifies it for the world.
Who's arguing that? Okay, let's follow the history. Follow what happened, the sequence of events. Okay, things happened. You need to know what happened first, then make your decision on whether or not you're going to accept it.
I don't really agree with your history.
No, you're not teaching a fucking class, Jill.
No, you can't teach this black. He's our slave. You can't teach him how to read the Bible and how to read history. He belongs to us. He comes on this channel all the time and says ignorant, dumb stuff that we don't correct him because we like him ignorant. Because once he learns something, he's going to leave. Once the slave learns how to read, he's going to leave the plantation and go get a job and start his own business. We don't want him to leave. We like our slaves. White liberals love their slaves, boy. Woo.
You know what happened?
Well, he doesn't. He's black.
We can fucking what?
They didn't even realize what I said. It's like, what? Yeah, he black. He black. He doesn't know. He does not know what happened. He was taught something different. I grew up teaching in the schools.
Did you just Uncle Tom him?
So let me educate him, please. Did I just Uncle Tom him? What?
What are you doing? He doesn't know he's black. What the fuck are you saying, Jill?
The Uncle Tom.
Okay.
Well, he said he didn't know. He said
About
he
America would call me
said
an
he
Uncle
doesn't know it.
Hey,
and he's
hold
black.
on. Let's let Jay talk. Jay's been pretty quiet this entire time.
From what I heard, he said
because
he
I try to
doesn't know it
educate you
and
on
he's
what I.
black. You get what I'm saying? Like pointing out he doesn't know it and he's black. Like maybe this is something that he should know, but he doesn't know. Like not he doesn't know it because he's black. That's just pointing that out.
Oh, I'm the average
He
black
should have
dude.
said that.
I don't know. I had put the phone down and walked away for a minute. I didn't really hear what he was saying.
No, that's what I'm saying. I caught that part. I ain't
Now,
want to ruin the whole thing just because of that. When I caught that,
now they want to have a debate on what I said. Now let's debate what Joe said for another 20 minutes, but he and not let him make a point he was trying to make. That's why I invited MC Time, the black guy down here. I invited him to a one-on-one. That was 2 hours ago, and he still hasn't showed up. So, I mean, I guess I was right. Yes, I was right.
What you think, Jay Money? Should I be offended?
No, you shouldn't.
I mean, I
Because I'm
can't tell
black.
anybody how to feel offended, but from what I got from that, that's what he was saying. Like he wasn't saying because you're black, you don't know because you're black. He's saying you're a black man and you don't know this.
I don't know. What did you
Not exactly. My position is that he more than likely grew up in this type of environment in which the Eurocentric, everything is centered around Europe, everything is centered around Greece and Rome, and there's no thought outside of Greece and Rome that is accepted, or at least if Rome and Greece say it, then it's true. If the Hebrews say something, then it might not be true. It is certainly not true if Greece and Rome say it's not true. Okay, so Eurocentrism is the reason why he doesn't know what church and state is, and as far as the modern day liberal or the modern day Eurocentric idea, is that church and state is the idea that the founders of this country wanted the Bible and Christ and the things of God, the principles of Scripture, they wanted that to be removed from our government and from our schools, when that was not the case. And we know that wasn't the case by their behavior. So you don't say separation of church and state is removing Bibles from your schools and then proceed to Bibles in all the schools. All the schools had Bibles. All the schools had prayer. This is before the Independence Day, after Independence Day, for hundreds of years, for 200 years, up until the 1950s, when you redefined church and state, or began to. Then church and state became something different. Why were they so afraid to teach the black man that historical truth? Why were they so afraid to let me think that? Because they're wicked. Won't allow it. They won't not allow you to learn the history of your country. They want to continue to pervert the history, and that's why they won't allow me to speak and tell you what happened.
I mean, number one, who is that? And number two, I'm not a typical black person that didn't let people allow me to do anything. If I wanted to learn and get the shit on my own, I didn't let people to dictate to me what I can learn and what I can't learn.
Okay.
He doesn't know he's black. What the fuck are you saying, Jill?
Uncle Tom.
Okay. Well, he said he didn't know. He said he doesn't know it.
Hey, hold on. Let's let Jay talk. Jay's been pretty quiet this entire time.
From what I heard, he said
because I try to educate you on what
black. You get what I'm saying? Like pointing out he doesn't know it and he's black. Like maybe this is something that he should know, but he doesn't know. Like not he doesn't know it because he's black. Like that's just pointing that out.
He black.
Oh, I'm not an average
You
black
should have
dude.
said that.
I don't know what I had put the phone down and walked away for a minute. I didn't really hear what he was saying.
No, that's what I'm saying. I caught that part. I ain't
Now,
want to ruin the whole thing just because of that. When I caught that, offering that up.
What you think, Jay Money? Should I be offended?
No, you shouldn't.
I mean, I
Because I'm
can't tell
black.
anybody how to
So I
feel
just-
offended, but from what I got from that, that's what he was saying. Like, he wasn't saying because you're black, you don't know, because you're black. He's saying you're a black man and you don't know this.
Not exactly. Not exactly. I was saying that because he's black, because more than likely he grew up in a Eurocentric sort of understanding of the world. Everything Greece and Rome says trumps what the Hebrews say, or what the darker people might have said in history. So he's coming from a Eurocentric, and more than that, he is coming from a Eurocentric progressive perspective. A modern day Eurocentric perspective is now going to pervert even the history of America to make America look evil. Okay, that's just what wicked people do. So one of the things that they pervert is the separation of church and state. They try to promote this idea that when they said separation of church and state, they were trying to separate God or remove God and the Bible from our government and the state and our institutions. When we know historically, and we have evidence that they did the exact opposite. So that could not have been what they meant. I mean, reason and logic should have led you down this path a long time ago, but you're stuck talking in echo chambers with idiots like this, like Arby, who don't know a goddamn thing about history, but will try to promote that as if they do. Everyone can fact check me on this. The fact of the matter is, logically speaking, the definition of church and state cannot be the one that the atheist is about to give. Because the people who wrote the letter to Danbury, or the Danbury letter, the people who wrote our Constitution and Declaration of Independence, the people who came over here even before that, came over on the Mayflower, did the exact opposite. They continued to include the Bible in schools up until about 1950. Sir, someone is lying. We know it's you. We know it's you. Okay. Someone is lying. Someone's definition is wrong. Someone's definition came later. Someone's definition is a redefinition of the term. People don't make definitions and declarations, separation of church and state, and then proceed to include the Bible in every school. Logically speaking, their definition of separation of church and state is not yours. This is simple logic, ladies and gentlemen. But again, when you're dealing with atheists who don't use logic and reason, especially when they're critiquing the Bible and Christianity, this is what you get. This is what you get.
What did you
Like,
do?
That's like an arrogant statement, though.
Yeah,
Might
that's
I
I know what I know anyway.
won't allow me
I
to give
can't
that.
tell you how to feel.
something.
They
That's
won't
what
allow it. They won't not allow you to learn the history of your country. They want to continue. Now he's pulling up his Puritan claim. Remember, he claimed that, well, the early Christians, they were all Puritans. He says. What percentage of people who came over here from Europe, the colonial days, right? The colonies, the colonial people, the colonizers, what percentage were Puritan? Let's see.
all of the Europeans to shut this idiot up, making these dumb claims. Can I share this? Yeah, I can share my screen. Let me share this. Always lying, bro. The most of them were Puritans, and when they came over here, they set up a stricter theocratic government. These people are so sad. All right, the answer depends on which time period, what percentage. There's my, just to show you that I'm not trying to manipulate the algorithm. So there's my question. What percentage of the people who came over here from Europe, colonial America, were Puritans? The answer depends on when you meet. A commonly repeated claim is that America was founded by Puritans, which was the claim Arby just basically tried to make. These people are so dishonest, bro. It's not even funny how dishonest they are. It's quite sad. I literally sometimes want to come to tears. Okay? Sometimes I want to come to tears. Only about a fourth were Puritans. The remaining 75% belonged to other religious groups or had mixed motivations. Okay, so you had Puritans. Most of them were Anglicans. Okay, most of the majority were Anglicans. You had Presbyterians and you had the Reformed people. I would probably be in this camp somewhere. And then Quakers. Look, Quakers only 3 to 5%. Catholics only 2 to 3%. Then you had Jews, Moravians, Mennonites, less than 2%. So there's the breakdown, buddy. Stop lying to black liberals or black liberals. Stop lying to black people, white liberal. Why do you keep lying? God, not even funny how much they lie, how much RB lies. He, she, they, them, whatever you want to call himself. I don't know. It's not even funny anymore. It really isn't. It's becoming quite sad how much this guy lies. So he tried to argue that, and then he brings this Google search up. Yes, they wanted to build a strict utopian religious society, which was strict as far as the social aspects. Socially, they were separatist. They did not want to set up a church-state government. They, like the Anglicans, like the Scottish, Irish Presbyterians, were escaping the Church of England because it was a church state. They did not want to be connected with the state. They wanted to be the church without interference from the state. Yeah. To revert to history. And that's why they want to allow me to speak and tell you what happened.
I mean, number one, who is that? And number two, I'm not a type of black person that didn't let people allow me to do anything. If I wanted to learn something, I learned it. Trust that. I did. I know. I got knowledge. I had things.
Then why aren't you here? Because they told you not to come over here. That's why you didn't come. I'm not the type to let it. White liberals own you, liberal. Black liberal, they've owned you since the 50s. Since they started perverting and changing definitions of words. That's why you think a fetus is a tadpole. You idiot. Because that's what they promoted. That's what they taught. Phonology recapitulates. Or something like that, to that effect. Which is the idea that the stages of development are actually evolutionary stages whereby the process begins with the tadpole and you become a frog and then you slowly become human in the womb. So what happens in the womb is actually encapsulating what happened to you evolutionary wise, meaning the stages of evolution are repeated on a small scale. Of course, they have billions and billions of years, but the process of evolution is actually repeated in the womb of a woman when she's pregnant. That's why you think a fetus is not a human to this day, you retards. That's why you lose every debate on the science when it comes to the fetus, when it comes to the child, the unborn and the abortion debate. You lose on the science. That's why I'm still a Christian, because I see so-called scientists getting their asses kicked with PhDs by just regular people who are just coming on, just opening up an embryonic textbook or a textbook on embryos and just making these guys look like idiots. Why? Because they're pushing propaganda. Yeah, they had PhDs, but if they don't push this propaganda, they will lose their license. They'll be shunned. Remember what Mussolini said about fascism. The state is ethnic. It's alive. It's a cult. And if you go against the state, you will be rejected. You will be kicked out. Okay? That's what fascism is functionally. That's how it functions. Go along to get along. Okay? Ask Seth Rich, who was going to come out and show the world Hillary's emails. Not that Hillary's emails, Hillary's real emails. Seth Rich, who worked for the Democratic Party, was going to turn on the Democratic Party and reveal the truth. Well, he was found deceased, and it was supposedly a gunshot wound, a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but the gun managed to get up and walk away. One of those things. So these people, remember, have always operated this way. When they set up their church state, they will kill you if you do not follow. When we set up our theocracy, all we're saying is, look, leave us alone. We don't want divorce. We don't want your no-fault divorce garbage. We don't want your stupid laws. We're not saying we're going to kill you if you don't obey. We're going to stop. We're going to cancel you if you don't follow the politically correct thing. You guys have more of a church theocracy state than the Puritans did. The Puritans just said, leave us alone. Let us marry our wives. Let us grow our crops. That's not what they were escaping. Had that only been what the Church of England was doing, had that only been what the Church of Rome was doing, setting up their own separatists, separating themselves from perhaps some other nations, they would have stayed, dummy. That is not what they were fleeing. So they didn't come over here to set up a more stricter church state. They came over here to set up more of a social strict nation or country or group in which they could be separate from the state and its rules.
Access to things that you probably wouldn't even understand, because I would took the initiative and get this shit on my own. I didn't let people to dictate to me what I can learn and what I can't learn.
Well, this is their time. So we can set up a one-on-one if we can go over the history of what happened when the Puritans.
I don't really believe anything you say, Jill. You have got.
Yeah, you don't believe anything I say because you believe Arby. And Arby told you that most of the people that came over here were Puritans, and they escaped the tyranny of the Church of England to set up a more strict form of tyranny. Is that what happened? This is the same trick that liberals try today when they say Donald Trump only wants to be president a second time so that he can implement his Project 2025 and turn America into a nationalist, a Christian nationalist state. And then our response is always, well, is that what happened the first time he was in office? And then you just hear silence. Like they always argue this way. They try to do what's called fear mongering. And in this case, he's doing it as far as trying to not make us fearful, but to try to pervert what happened in the past, not what's going to happen in the future. Okay, that's obviously the difference. So he's saying They came over here, yeah, but they came over here not to flee from the church state and the tyranny and the persecution, but they came over here because they just wanted to set up their own uh, tyrannical government that is worse than the one they came from. That's more strict. Okay, then we ask, well, what is it that they were trying to be strict about? That's when their little argument falls apart. The devil, the details. What do they say? The devil's in the details. I don't like that saying. The devil hates details. Satan, people like Arby, they hate details. They love to operate in the mundane. They love to operate in the obscurity of the matter. Instead of giving the black man the details of the matter that the Puritans were trying to separate from government. The Anglicans were trying to separate from government, from a church state. And they set up their own laws that would allow you, that was less strict in that respect, that you could have other religions. And we're just going to defeat you in the public square, like we've been doing when the internet came out. That became the public square. We're going to defeat you there. That's a New Testament biblical concept. When Paul went into Areopagus on Mars Hill to debate the Stoics, he didn't send a tribunal to condemn them to death. He sat and he reasoned with them. And some of them said, yeah, sure, I'd like to hear more about this. Some of them rejected him, I'm sure. And some of them said, yeah, that sounds interesting. That's how our society, that's how we went from mostly a barbarians. People are fighting and solving problems by fighting, to now where we have something we call diplomacy. It happened because of Christianity and Christians, and not because of secularists. Secularism, again, doesn't even get you free. You are still stuck with England. What freed you from England was your creator. The excuse was we should be free because our creator gave us these rights, not you, king. You didn't give us these rights. The creator did. The king's like, well, who's the creator? If I'm the king, who the hell is the creator? Certainly isn't you. You didn't create us. So even if they were deists, secularism doesn't help. It never did. It doesn't free anything. All it does is puts you in more bondage. Oh boy. This country even uses Libertas, the sun goddess in New York. Okay. For liberty and death. It's just another Babylon from the ancients. Yeah. Babylon also allowed other religions. Babylon also allowed other religions as well. So we can say that America is similar to ancient Babylon in that respect. Okay. But they were not, this is not a secular idea. It didn't come from secularists. It came from people who believed in a creator, who believed in something beyond other human governments. Because you can't free yourself from human government by saying, well, we're our own human government. You're still bound to respect the laws that were given to you by the people who are over you, your government. Anything, you don't have a reason to rebel other than just to rebel. You don't have a philosophy behind the rebellion. You're just saying, I don't want to be under your laws anymore. Well, what reason do you have? What rights do you have? And where do those rights come from before you can rebel? How do you substantiate? How do you demonstrate that those rights are valid? I don't want to follow the U.S. Constitution anymore. Why not? Because I created another constitution. So what? Both documents have equal value. You haven't one up me because you came up with a different system, a different man-made system. The founders of our country knew that much. So what they did, whether they were genuinely believers in God or not, was say, okay, fact of the matter is, brute fact, ready for it? Rights do not come from government. Donald Trump says this all the time because it's true. They come from God. So we are leaving your government. We're going to form our own eventually. But the reason why we have the right to leave is because we believe that our rights come from God. We are endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights. You cannot take them away from us because you didn't give them to us to begin with. Cannot take them because you didn't give them. You're not the origin of our rights. The origin of our rights is God. You see how they did it? These people were a lot smarter than you. Even if they were secularist, they knew, logically speaking, you cannot free yourself from one man-made government by saying, I'm going to start another man-made government. You don't have an argument. My government is better than yours. Okay.
Hey man, Reed, I keep asking you for reasons. Why should I believe
I
you?
can't give it here. Obviously, I'm going to be muted and not allowed.
All right. All right. On that note, I say let's then.
So we can set up we can set up our own conversation if you like on your channel or some other channel. But obviously,
Yeah, because you're getting
can't have
spanked
that
here.
conversation here.
Your ass is pink right now. I bet you won't be able to sit down for a week.
Yeah, and also I can't wait for you to understand the history with respect to the emancipation of slaves globally around the world. Like when you start learning about William Wilberforce and the West Africa Squadron, you're gonna.
William Wilberforce dummy was a Christian. What are you talking about? When you start learning about William Wilberforce, these are Christians who read the Bible. John Brown was a Christian. How is it that you don't realize this? They were not secularist. There's not one secularist or secular idea that freed anyone, whether it be the Independence Day, 1777, whether it be those people who were white colonists, or whether it be a black in the antebellum South. Not one secularist idea came to help black people in the South. It was conservative Christian values. Let my people go. No one ever taught you this history? No one?
Fall off your fucking chair, Jill.
I'm going to fall off my chair. I bet you just fell off your chair now after knowing the facts. How am I going to fall off my chair because you mentioned William Wilberforce? All right, let me think about that. Like, what do you like? Atheists always make these claims, but they never explain why would I fall off my chair? William Wilberforce confirms what I am saying. William Wilberforce, was he a Christian? And what did he advocate for? What scriptures did he use to prove that that you should not be treated in this fashion? William Wilberforce. It's just so much ignorance. You don't really have time to address it all. That's why I prefer one-on-ones on my channel. In fact, I don't even feel the need to have 10 or 15 people on a panel, especially dealing with people like this. Because I like to actually, everything you say, I like to fact check. And you really don't have the time to do that. They don't allow me to do that at all on their channels. Yes, William Wilberforce was a committed evangelical Christian whose faith profoundly shaped his life in public service. He's best known for leading the preliminary or the parliamentary campaign to abolish the British slave trade and later slavery throughout most of the British Empire. Okay, talks about his Christian conversion here. And he believed God set before him, but this is the Bible teaches slavery is okay, huh? No, dummy. That was a perversion. Okay, people like Wilberforce wouldn't exist if that were not a perversion. And I can demonstrate if you want to get into those passages that are often used. I wrote an entire paper on this idea, and I actually found the verses they used. And by the way, in the Slave Bible, I have a video on this, and OE's going to get his butt kicked. It's not even going to be funny. But I'm interested to see their reaction to the video or to the debate we have. The reaction videos will be more complaining about Jill and how Jill debates than it will be about how Jill lost the debate. Of course, they're going to say I lost, but they're not going to be able to tell you how. That's typical of my debates with atheists. They lose. They don't have a reason why they should have won or supposedly won. So Jill is a bad person. Don't debate him ever again. Okay. So the Slave Bible actually removed many verses, the verses where it says slavery is wrong. And they only kept the verses where it was speaking about a slave who already volunteered to work, how he is to obey. So obeying your masters, slaves obey your masters. This is someone who already agreed to the contract. So now they have to be forced to work because that was what they agreed upon. So the Bible says that you should keep your word. If you make an agreement to work for someone for 7 years, Joseph, poor Joseph, or Jacob rather, poor Jacob, then you must work those 7 years. Okay. Slaves, obey your masters. Okay. Don't agree to working for your master and then bail out. So they took those passages, ripped them out of their context, and that is what they allowed the slave to read. Of course, to get them to believe that their situation that they're in is just, that it's perfectly fine. Okay. They removed all the passages where it says slavery is wrong. That's forced. When you force someone to work for you, that's illegal. That's punishable by death. They removed passages about the Exodus, where God is now confronting an entire nation for slavery. They removed that. They removed 80%, 80 to 90% of the Old Testament. Okay. William Wilberforce did not remove those passages. He let the Bible speak for what it actually communicates. And that's why he set out to abolish the slave trade and to reform public morality. Okay. He spent about 20 years introducing bills. This is a Christian. Where are the secularists? Why aren't the secularists spending 20 years introducing bills to end Britain's participation in the Atlantic slave trade? Where were you at, guys? Where was Async Atheist Network? Where were you? Where were you? This is all Christians here doing this work, not you. You sat on your ass. You sat on your ass, basically. So don't cry and complain today about slavery when it was us and the Bible who came forward and spoke out against slavery, not you. Christian. Wilberforce was a Christian, genius. So again, where are the atheists protesting slavery? Where are they? Where are the atheist advocating groups? Where are they? They didn't exist.
Jill, the document most used to justify slavery and the document most
So
used
let
to
me
justify
just
the ending of slavery was the same fucking book, Jill.
I'll try. Yeah, they perverted
The
it. Like,
same book.
they perverted the book. I wrote a paper on it in my
Why
graduate.
were we using?
Christians didn't pervert, or maybe they did. Christians and non-Christians alike, which means that they weren't much Christian at all if you're perverting the Bible. They removed whole sections of the Bible before they allowed the slave to read them, because they did not want them to recognize what the Bible actually says. So a perversion of a thing is not the definition of a thing, logically speaking. Christians came later, risked their lives, like Wilberforce, to tell you what the Bible actually says about the matter. Where were you at? You weren't even reading your Bibles. That's why you couldn't come to our defense. You couldn't come to my ancestors' defense because you were a secularist. You didn't even know what the Bible taught. Not only that, but you didn't come. There was no basis for you to come help us. That's why you don't see any atheist groups coming out against slavery. There's no basis for it. It's not putting any more or less money in your pocket. That's all you cared about was yourself. That's all you care about is yourself today. That's why you don't allow for discourse, because you only care about what you have to say about the matter. You're the same people. You're the same spirit. You have the same spirit of the people that lived back then who were perverting the Bible and enslaving, using it to enslave humans. You are of the same wicked spirit. No doubt about it. Now, there's no doubt about it now, after this conversation.
They don't care. Just identify these.
Well. Did you get rid of science?
Identify these
No,
people,
we don't
please.
get rid of science because people perverted it. Okay,
Hey,
so
what
let me
was your
get back-
paper featured in the toilet stall?
So let me go back to trying to educate this man.
I bet it
Okay,
got a
when
lot
it
of
comes
brown
to-
marks.
Nobody
So-
can
so
pervert
the
science, by the
declaration-
way.
So the
Science is a
declaration,
method.
they won't even allow
all
this
attempts to
information to come
educate
out.
me
They
is
won't
moot
allow
without
this
a reason to
These
believe
are
anything you
just
say.
like the Dixiecrats. They will not allow you to learn what your actual history is
Dixie
in
crap.
America.
Here we go.
Just like Bull O'Connor and the Dixiecrats from down south. The white racist liberals, they're still racist today. They won't allow it. They won't allow for you to learn what happened when the Mayflower came over here, what actually happened. They want you
No,
to think
I
that
just educated
we're
you on
evil.
what happened when the Mayflower came.
You just educated me by telling me that most of the people that came over here were Puritans, you lying scallywag. We just fact checked you in real life, buddy. In real time. We saw the percentages. Here they are again. Lying scallywag. Here are the percentages again. This is the breakdown of European colonies or colonists to colonial, coming from Europe to colonial America. Okay? Only 20 to 25%, not most. You lied, sir. You are a liar. Or you were ignorant of the facts. Pick one. Pick one. So don't tell me you're here to educate anyone. You're not. You're here to obfuscate. You're here to lie. And you're here to prevent the truth from coming out. Because a black man is here who has been lied to his entire life by people like you. Homosexuals like yourself. Okay? Who don't even know what their own gender is. Who lied to themselves about their own gender. So you can't help anyone. Not me, not McTime me. You can't help anyone. You can't even help yourself. Okay? They were escaping.
You were actually trying to deny that reality.
They were escaping.
And when I brought it up, it completely shattered your entire argument.
Okay. McTime.
Why did it take over 2,000
escaping,
years in the
sir.
advent of the secular government before it even was an option to eliminate slavery?
They were not looking to set up a secular government. They were looking to set up a government in which you had the right to choose whether or not you wanted to be a Catholic or not.
Okay, they were not
And
saying that
unless you
being a
follow
Catholic
right.
is evil. Hold on,
No,
brother.
incorrect.
They
The
were
the
not saying that
Puritans the
being a
Puritans
Christian was
wanted to
evil.
enforce only
They were saying
their
that
religious school
forcing
of thought.
people to be Catholic. Where in the Puritan bylaws did they suggest that other ideas or other sects of Christianity could not exist? Nowhere. They were separatists, dummy. Do you know what a separatist is? A separatist means we want to separate from you. We're not trying to stop you from believing what you want to believe. That is not a church state, idiot. A church state says that this is the religion of the state, and anyone else practicing another religion is persecuted in some way. God, like, I don't understand why they don't understand. Christian is evil, which is 100% biblical. Okay, so that
No,
is
what they were saying
Well,
what they were
all
saying
this
you've
is
movement
managed,
was built
all
on
you've
a
managed to
biblical
show
principle.
is that atheists didn't care while the
Boom.
Christians were violating other Christians. I mean, you're
Yeah,
talking
I
about
mean,
Christian on
biblical.
Christian crime,
So
and
secondly,
atheists are completely innocent in all of it. So,
Jill,
just
if you read your
for the
declaration,
record,
it was Christian on Christian crime. It was black on black crime. So no one cared to do anything or say anything about it. Yeah. That is the same problem you have today because you're not a Christian, because you have no moral standard, no justification for morality. You can pick and choose when you care. And if it's blacks killing blacks, you don't care. If it's a white person killing a black person, you do care. So if it's Christians enslaving other Christians, you say nothing. We had to step up. William Wilberforce, Christians, actual Christians, calling out other Christians who claim to be Christian. You should not be treating people this way if you're Christian. It was us, it was Christians who stepped up to the plate and condemned both Christians and secularists who were having slaves, who were forcing people to work against their will. Whether you were black or white or a secularist or a Christian or a Buddhist, we were the ones that stepped up, not you. What's your excuse today? Well, why should we have said anything? Because it's just Christians enslaving other Christians. Demonic demon. God, that's wicked. God, that's wicked. Independence. Now, the
that's what you're
Declaration of
describing.
Independence is what makes you free to even sin against God. They
So,
used
Jill,
God. Get this.
Sin doesn't
They
exist.
used God. They invoked a creator. They called him the
A
creator.
creator, not a
And he says
god.
that the creator, a creator, not a God, which I don't believe in either. I don't believe either exists. Dirt is
Can I-
the
The
one
founding
that
fathers
gives
were
you
deists.
rights, not
Yeah.
another
can I
human
can,
or a
can I
church
just
Most of
state.
the time.
They were deists, not atheist, not secularist. It was a theistic idea that they used to declare your independence. It wasn't a secularist idea. So secularism could not have been responsible for your freedom. Period. I don't know who told you that, but whoever told you that lied to you. All you have to do is sit down and look at the facts. If it's a theist idea, whether they were Christian or theist or not, if it's a theist idea promoted by secularists, it is still a theist idea. They are borrowing from theism to freedom. Why? Because a secularist idea they understood was inferior, was not able to. You're not able to argue effectively. It's not a sound argument to say, well, I know you gave me my rights. I know my rights come from you. You're the government. But I'm going to leave and start my own, make up my own rights. It's not effective. Instead, they said, you know what? All rights initially come from our creator. So you didn't give me these rights. You are just here to facilitate them.
Basically, you're here to make sure that I don't lose those rights, but you didn't give them. They come from our Creator. See the difference?
Only after this advent of the secular government, because you probably right. The Christians did. They probably wanted to force their type of Christianity on the rest of everybody in this nation. But there was so many different types of Christians till they realized, hey, I don't want him to force his Christianity on me, and I don't want his, and he don't want me to force mine on his. So let's just make the government secular. That way, everybody can have their type of Christianity. Because in order for you to have freedom of religion, I need freedom from.
Hey, brother Talk, how's it going? I didn't see you there in the chat. Talk says I've seen this channel, but I've never tried to speak to these humans. If they don't accept Jesus already, how could they accept anyone else like him, but also not like him? Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, Talk. And Garland says he's just explaining how this nation was built through Christianity, right? Not that you believe that Jesus was real. Yeah. The founders of this country used the God of the Bible, who's said to be the creator of all things, and they simply used him. Whether they were genuine believers in Jesus or not is irrelevant. The argument is, was it secularism that freed us, or was it Christianity that gave us our freedoms? The answer clearly is, or was it maybe not Christianity, but was it the idea of God or deistic ideas, concepts? It was clearly deistic concepts. Atheistic concepts could never have freed us. Never. Because they were arguing that our rights come from something higher other than humans on a direct plane, on a horizontal plane. They were arguing that our rights really originate vertically from the creator down, then we figure it out in a horizontal sense. And governments were only designed by God to implement and to reinforce those rights that come from God, to protect them, basically. So government's job is not to create or give us the rights, but to protect those rights and to codify them even in some sort of sense where you have a written law. Okay. But that is a Christian idea. Even though they weren't Christians, that is our idea. That idea does not come from a secularist perspective because it involves something that is not human, our creator. It involves something that they don't even believe exists. Right? Perfect. Thank you. So the idea is that Christianity teaches that you come to Christ by way of Christ alone. You do not come to Christ by someone forcing you.
It don't teach you how to balance slavery, though.
Threatening to burn you alive. Okay, that is not of God. All right. So the earliest,
yet it's in God's book.
97% of them were Christians.
Funny that.
Protestants. Now, the reason why we know separation of church and state was not what liberals perverted to mean today. They wanted to separate from the church state, the wicked church state, the Protestant.
Oh, go fuck yourself.
That's the separation of church.
Still not answering the question.
Jill.
When they see how they. So that was a fact, and you saw the reaction. Now, will they allow me to, which is what I did here, to actually demonstrate that this is the case through logic and reason? No, because they don't want this black guy here to know the truth about the country he grew up in. And this is how white liberals operate, generally speaking.
Jill,
here's how we know this. Let me round this
Jill,
out.
do you know what? You don't know it because it's incoherent. It's
Jill, shit.
Jill,
I'd like to hear your response.
There are methods. Jill,
here's why we know
Jill,
this is true. Hold on.
Jill, there are Methodist, Catholic, and Church of England churches that predate the Mayflower landing in the Americas.
Oh, it's true. We know this is. What did that have any? See, He was trying to cut me off to provide a red herring, a distraction. What does people on the Mayflower have to do that came before the colonists have to do with it? We're talking about the colonists. And then later, the people who set up our government. They set up our government not based off of a secularist idea, but they declared their independence primarily because they used the argument, a theistic argument, that our rights don't come from you, England. They really come from God. So therefore, we can make ourselves independent of you. If we feel as though you're trying to impede on those rights that are endowed by our Creator, we can leave you. Because our rights don't come from you. That is a Christian idea. That is not a secularist or an atheistic idea, because it includes the belief of a higher power, mainly God, who is not human. I mean, you haven't said anything to refute. Well, did you know that there were people that came over here on the Mayflower? Like, what? Who cares? Let me let this play out because I got to get to work.
In the United Kingdom.
Because when they came over here, they implemented Bibles in schools. That's how we know separation of church and state was to separate from the church state, the wicked church state.
No, that is not. No.
Yeah, because Andrew Jackson had got this shit out of
earliest colonial. No, that is not. I can't say how, but I don't. That's not what I was taught. Men and women, when they set up their schools and their government, they placed Bibles in those schools and in the government.
It's probably true until Andrew Jackson became president, because he was the second president and he got rid of all that shit.
True or false, atheist?
I just said true. Andrew Jackson.
He said true until Andrew Jackson. I love the fact that atheists, whenever they speak, they actually reveal a lot more truth, but they're not revealing the truth because they want to promote truth. They just so happen to say things that refute their entire argument, but they don't realize it. He just said up until Andrew Jackson, who is the founder of the Democratic Party? Andrew Jackson. Who led the Trail of Tears? Andrew Jackson. Who had slaves promoted, had over 400 slaves? Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson. Not until Andrew Jackson. How long has America been going on under the idea that God is the one who endowed us with our rights? Up until Andrew Jackson. I'm fine with that. I think that matches history quite well. Mm-hmm. Thank you. So Andrew Jackson came and he was the first. He didn't finish the job. The job wasn't finished until around the 60s, about the 1960s, around there. But he began to try to remove God from government. But that was not the initial case. The initial thrust, the reason why they came over here, was to remove themselves from the church state and start their own government, in which the government could not get involved with the church. The church would remain the church, whether you were Presbyterian, whether you were Catholic, whether you were Protestant. The church would remain the church without government coming in saying, you know what, that baptism, that wasn't really based on the standard that we set, so you might want to baptize that baby all over again. And we just ran out of holy water at the Vatican, so you're gonna have to find some way to do it. Maybe the Red Sea, the Reed Sea, maybe. Okay, so that's what they were escaping. The persecution, the religious persecution. So yes, they set up strict the Puritans because they're separatists. Other groups were not separatists, so they weren't as strict. Okay, you were allowed to wear other colors besides black and white. Okay, all right, but that was more of a social type of strict network of laws. Okay, rather than a theocracy. If you don't preach this gospel the way we right, that type of thing, where theology now, you have the wrong God, bye-bye, excommunicated or dead. Okay, that's more of a theological type of theocracy, or what a theocracy really is. A theocracy is more than just the social aspect of the matter. Okay, no clothes, no colors, no short mini skirts, etc.
Was the second president, and he got rid of all that shit because they did what's that, the case of Virginia, where he said that he didn't something about you can't, the thief can pick my pocket. What you know what I'm talking about, Arthur, with Andrew Jackson and the case in Virginia, and he got the Bibles out of school and all that stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't listening.
You were picking out two random points in history and drawing a line like they're fucking connected, and you can't do that. I'm sorry, you're just fucking wrong. Why don't you just eat the fucking crayons instead of drawing your imaginary lines, Jill? Like, eat the fucking crayons like a good little Christian.
He's not answering the question. I want to know why they have
unbelievable.
Why they had a 2,000 year gap with the Christianity? It was in control of the government, and it had slavery for that entire time. They had witch trials for the entire time. They had inquisitions for the entire time. They had all that stuff for the 2,000 years that Christianity was in control of that end of the world, and the world went into a dark age. But the minute we come out of, and it's only been 250 years, what, a couple of days ago? And 250 years is barely a quarter or 2,000 years? Not much a quarter, it's like 5% of 2,000 years. And in all the time we came all this way. Why so much time on the Christian government that was the world going to a dark age?
These historical facts are a shock to many. Okay, they are a shock to the atheists. That's why you're silent right now.
But Jill, like, just with respect to
banter, because you can't
Jill,
be wrong, and you've never heard this before.
Jill, with respect to the history, I just want to challenge you over something here. And I realize I've battered you a bit, but this is important. I've just Googled Roman Catholic churches and Protestant churches, all of which were in about 3 miles of my house. There's the Church of Our Lady, there's St. Peter's Roman Catholic Church, there's St. Joseph's Roman Catholic Church.
A lot of Catholic churches.
Yeah. And then Protestant
Jill,
churches.
Robin is fucking cooking you in chat.
And then Protestant churches, there's the Plymouth Brethren Free Church, there's the Emmanuel Evangelical Church, the Saltersford Church. All of these churches, every single one of them was built and existed prior to the existence of and discovery of the United States. So we do seem to have a lot of institutions that existed quite openly and comfortably and built massive pieces of infrastructure without being persecuted to death. So again, why the hell would people have fled a country that seemed to have no problem with their existence in the first place, unless they were the puritanical?
They did have the religious freedoms were being taken from them. That's why they left. When you have a church state where the government now is imposing religion onto people, even Christians, even people who say that they're Christians, they were imposing their rules and their laws and abusing the scriptures, which is something we should flee from as Christians. When people are abusing and doing what you guys complain about often, using the Bible to browbeat and to put people to death and to excommunicate and all of those things, God never intended to be the case. And Protestants protested the Catholic Church and the Church of England because they implemented a church state. It is wicked, and it is be separated from that. That is separation of church and state. When they came to these countries, up until 1950 or so, you had Bibles in the school.
Jill,
no one considered that to be separation of church and state until you guys came along.
Jill, can I just do you know
no one considered that Bibles in the schools, prayer in the school, no one ever considered that to be a violation. I misspoke. No one ever considered that to be a violation of church and state until these idiots were born. Okay? Jesus is Lord and he's coming back. I'll see you next